Today we're going to start off with some silver casting grain. This is 925 sterling silver. Let's melt it. Crucible's hot. We got a good puddle going, and we're going to pour it into this ingot mold. Oh, seriously. After that little miscalculation, let's go ahead and file this thing. We're going to taper the end so we can put it through a rolling mill and get the dimensions we want. We're going to make a square bangle. And so I just want to get the leading edge of this ingot rounded and smooth so it feeds into the rolling mill just right. All right, let's roll. So I'm adjusting the thickness to just smaller than my diameter that I have right now. And I'm putting it through the square dies. And that will create a square edge, and I keep running it through, and I'm adjusting the depth, taking half a turn each time, and that way it'll just narrow the gap and create a longer and more square ingot. And I just keep repeating this process. Now what I didn't show is in between some of these takes, in between the rolls, I have to anneal it, which means I get the metal a dull red hot for about a minute, and then I quench it in water, and that softens the sterling silver and allows me to roll it out even further. Back at the bench, we're just going to go super fast and file this thing. We're getting all the sharp edges off. We're getting all the inconsistencies off of the ingot, or now it's actually square wire, and then we can proceed with the next step in the process. Flattening the material on my anvil is the next step. Once we get it flat, we'll put a texture finish on it. We're going to use the cross peen, which I've come to favor lately. Actually, I love how this pattern turns out. So, of course, this is sped up 2 times. I cannot hammer that fast, seriously. But it comes out with a great finish. Once we get this done, we're going to cut it to length. So I'm cutting off one of the ends right now, which was a little squirrely. It had a really gnarly burl on the end, so I cut that off. Now we're going to measure and get the right length for our bangle bracelet, and it looks like I'm there, so we're going to just file it flat. On to the tapered mandrel. I'm going to form this around the tapered mandrel. Because I annealed the material, it's very soft and easy to move. And as I pound it and put it around the mandrel, and I'm using a leather mallet, and this is actually work hardening it too. So anytime you bend the material or strike it with a hammer or a tool, it work hardens it. Now we have a gap where our solder needs to go, so I'm taking an equalizing file. It's a needle file that's a rectangle shape, and I am pressing both ends of the bracelet into the file to create a square edge on each end, and that way there's no gaps. When you solder any bracelet or piece of jewelry, or really anything for that matter, you don't want any gaps. The solder will find its way through capillary action to get into the seam, but you don't want any large gaps. Onto the soldering station. This has to be one of the most satisfying aspects of the jewelry industry. Soldering and melting metal and causing it to flow into your seam is just incredible. I'm still amazed at this process, and I've been doing this about 18 years. So I'm just taking sterling silver hard solder and heating up the bracelet and getting the solder to flow. We'll go back to the bench and flatten the bangle. It was a little misshapen, so I'm using a leather mallet and a steel block, and I'm flattening it. The bracelet was still a little misshapen, so I'm taking it over to the tapered mandrel once again with the leather mallet, and we're gonna use one side and then flip it over and do the other side, so we have a nice flat and square bracelet. Removing excess solder and any irregularities within the band is really important. So I'm using a cylinder burr. We're going to smooth out the inside of the bracelet so it's comfortable to wear, and also there's no sharp edges. In this process, I'm taking the corners down too, so it's easy to get on and off. And as I do that, we just run through the steps. So I do the cylinder burr and then a coarse sandpaper, and then we move to finer and finer sandpapers to get the finish that we want. Let's stamp this thing. We're going to use a 925 stamp, which indicates sterling silver, and place that on the inside of the bracelet. And one thing about jewelry making, there's always endless hours of filing and sanding and polishing. Once you actually create the piece, it's just a long process to go through and file, sand, polish, and finish. But it's extremely important. That's what creates the luster in the gold or silver or whatever material you're working in, and allows for smooth edges, so when you wear it, it feels comfortable. At the polishing machine, now we're going to take all the sandpaper marks and make them a mirror finish. So I'm doing the inside, then I do the outside, and then of course put it into the ultrasonic cleaner. Put it in, and we take it out in like 3 seconds. I'm just kidding. It actually took a few minutes, but we cut the video so it's not so long. Rinse it in some water, and there we go. We have a bracelet. And here's the final product. I'm really happy with how this turned out. It was almost an ounce of sterling silver. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this, and thank you for watching.